Hi guys, as promised, it is time for one of those recipe videos. I put up a poll right at the end of January asking what kind of videos everybody wanted to see the most. Recipes actually had 50% of the votes. Now, we've already passed the first week of February, but guys, it was lack of timing on my part. So I own that. I am going to run this into March. I am going to start doing at least 1 to 2 recipe videos every week, showing you both some of our favorite recipes and larger meals, but also some really basic cooking skills. So today we are making French toast. The next one I plan on doing is actually going to be browning hamburger. Some really basic stuff. One is actually a full meal. One is something to put in meals. But we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna get started on this French toast today. You're probably gonna hear some background noise. I have no idea how much my microphone's gonna catch up or pick up because my husband is graciously in the basement with the 4 youngest kids that are home. 2 of our extras are at school right now, so it is the perfect time to get this done. My teenagers are very quietly in the background everywhere doing schoolwork and other things like that, or reading. I've got one smiling at me. So, with that said, guys, French toast is super easy. This is kind of an American classic. I have no doubt it's in other countries too. Somebody's going to correct me on that, and that's okay. In fact, if you've got the history of French toast, feel free to put that in the comment section down below. The main ingredients that you are going to need for French toast, you guys, honestly, you can get by with 2 ingredients. You are going to need a loaf of bread and eggs. If you've got that, you can make it. Now, you can definitely doctor this up. There are some amazing chefs and cooks out there that make some really fancy French toast. You can do it in the oven, all these ways. But guys, I'm going to keep it really basic for you today. Now, you can use a plain regular bread, which is what we always used to use. My husband, being a bread man, we have access to a lot of other stuff. So he brings home breakfast breads for us. One of our favorites for French toast is this cinnamon burst. Cinnamon raisin is good. Country Hearth also makes a blueberry bread. Guys, this is not a plug for Country Hearth because I know they're not nationwide. So if you don't have them, I'm sorry. Maybe your local bread companies will make something similar. Anyhow, we like this one because when I used to make French toast with plain bread, I would add cinnamon to the batter. This kind of eliminates the need to add that ingredient. But I'm going to show you guys how to do that too, just in case. Next, you're going to need eggs. I am also going to show you guys today how to do the float test. Now, that is because, guys, my eggs, it does not want to focus. There we go. They're past date. But they're not super far. Eggs do not magically just go bad on the date on the carton. This is the use by date, not an expiration date. I know that sounds like the same thing. It's very similar. But there is a way to test your eggs in water to see if they're still okay to use. I would not use a lot of them for scrambled eggs and things. Usually the older they are, the better they are in baked items and things like that. But I'm going to show you guys how to do that. We are also, guys, this ingredient is a little controversial in the French toast world, but I am going to be adding milk to my mixture. That one, I always have. I don't know why. I'm going to admit, I don't know why we add it. I just always have. I feel that it makes the batter a little better coating. I don't know. Anyhow, I've actually, from watching other professional chefs and stuff, learned that this is a trend that a lot of people don't do. Some people do. Some people add different things. You can choose to add it or not. We add it to ours. I do also, again, have cinnamon. This jar is pretty much empty because our kids love to add it to applesauce. So I also have a brand new jar. I'm going to show you guys how to add that to your mixture in case you're using plain bread and you want that little extra pop of flavor. All right, let me go ahead. I'm going to get everything ready to do the float test, show you guys how to do that, and then we'll move on. To float eggs, all you're going to need is a bowl of cold or cool water. You can use a regular bowl. It needs to be deep enough that the egg can not only sit in it, but be fully submerged in the water. Then you're going to take your eggs. You're going to place them one by one in the water. If they sink, such as this one did, then they are good to go. My recommendation is, if you're going to do this, either have another bowl sitting to the side to place them in once they are done. I always keep a towel right here to dry them off. Now, because we have a kiddo with an egg allergy, I am very careful to make sure that the towel that I'm using to dry the eggs off is one that goes straight into the dirty towel hamper as soon as I'm done. It does not hang out in the kitchen or anything else. I'm going to use this old carton now to place all the eggs in as I'm done floating them. Guys, the amount of eggs you're going to want to float or test is really determined by how much you plan on making for French toast. Because we are such a large family, we typically use about 2 to 3 dozen eggs when we make French toast. So there is that. If it's just for 1 or 2 of you, determine how much you'd use, and you're going to have to start experimenting and see. You need to use enough eggs that you can create a big enough bath for your bread, which I'm going to walk you guys through here in just a bit. And so far, guys, I don't have any bad eggs to show you. You're going to know when it is totally up at the top and bobbing. If an egg is down at the bottom but kind of swaying around, that is not bad. That because eggs naturally have an air pocket in them, it does actually create some of that. All right, guys, I've officially floated all of these eggs. There's 21 eggs here. None of them were bad. These are dated the end of January. Usually eggs are good for a decent amount of time afterwards. Not a lot. Depends on the store and the place they're coming from and all of that. But this is ready for use. This carton I'm going to keep back over here just in case we do happen to need more. Because we are down 2 kids today, I don't know that we will. Especially given that one of our kids cannot have French toast and neither can myself. Okay, guys, so the next step when you're making French toast, we got to crack these eggs. Now, you're going to find some really fancy tricks on YouTube, and I got to admit, guys, my husband has definitely tried some of them. You're going to find some from like Asian street vendors and whatnot that can take 2 eggs, crack them against each other, and split them. Most of us cannot do that. That is a skill that is learned, that is not automatic. When you are cracking an egg, you're going to hold it firmly in your hand, leaving a surface space. You're going to find somewhat of a, not necessarily a sharp edge, but a solid, thin edge. So this bowl has a very thin rim. That's where the lid hangs onto, which I know every Tupperware person just cringed when I said lid, but that's a whole other thing. The edge of my counter is actually, let's see if I can move my camera here. The edge of my counter is actually very rounded. I can use this edge, but I do not recommend it. Now, sometimes when I am cooking and making eggs, I will actually stand down here on the end. This edge is actually perfect for cracking eggs on. Guys, the trick to cracking eggs on a countertop and all of that is to know your own strength, but also know your surface. And know accidents happen. It has to be a space that can get egg spilled on it and that you are going to clean up afterwards. Because guys, when egg dries, it can be a beast to clean off. Not only that, it can actually eat the finish off of things if you're not careful. So we are going to go ahead and I'm going to try to use the edge of this bowl to show you guys that and get some of these eggs cracked. Okay, so holding that egg firmly, I'm going to hold onto my bowl to stabilize it. We're going to rest it against the edge. And we're going to pull back. Didn't do anything. Okay, that time I got a nice solid thwack on it. We're going to put our thumbs in this opening and gently pull apart. Now, guys, one thing just happened. I did not initially have any shell get in there, but a little piece came off of this egg right here in the bowl. Now, I just fished that out. You can use a butter knife, you can use a spoon. The only thing I recommend is when you are fishing shell pieces out, do it immediately. Don't wait until you have more eggs in there because it's going to be more difficult. Also, be careful not to break that yolk because once that yolk breaks, it's going to be more difficult to fish those shell pieces out. You're going to get the stringy goo. That's okay. Your hands are going to get messy. That's okay. Just make sure when you are done cracking all of the eggs that you wash your hands thoroughly with soap. We don't want to be spreading any bacteria around the kitchen or anywhere else because Eggs, raw eggs, most definitely can harbor bacteria. Now, I've got my towel sitting over here that I dried the eggs on. This is going to go straight in the bathroom anyhow, so I can use this to wipe my fingers on. Now, one thing I want to point out, guys, when you're doing this, along the edge of the bowl here, I'm not sure, there you go. See these tiny white pieces? Those are tiny shell fragments. So you're going to want to just use your fingers, wipe them off, because again, you don't really want that to be in your French toast. They're tiny enough, you're probably never going to notice them, but who wants to chance that? The thing is that once upon a time, I used to use a pie pan to put the eggs in. I would fill it about halfway, scramble them in that, and it really works great for laying pieces of bread in to coat them in the egg mixture. So I'm going to get the rest of these cracked here, and then I'll show you the next step. Okay, guys, so I got all 21 eggs cracked. That is down here in this bowl. Now, if you are really paranoid about shells or unsure of your skills, I actually recommend using a smaller bowl, even a glass measuring cup or something like that, to crack eggs in individually. And as you crack each one, pour it into your larger dish once you're sure that there's no shells in it. Makes it easier to fish them out. It's also great when you're first learning how to crack eggs. So there is a tip or trick for you guys. All right, so the next step, once we have these eggs, you can use a fork or a whisk. We are going to go ahead and we are going to whisk all of these eggs together. All right, guys, so using the whisk or the fork, first thing I like to do is I go through and I pop a bunch of the yolks. It just makes it a little bit easier when you start beating everything together. Yes, you can use an electric mixer if you want to. I do try to minimize the amount of dishes that I create. And when you use the whisk, if you add cinnamon or something to it here in a little bit, it really helps to have this next to it so that you can continue mixing, because the cinnamon will separate from the egg slightly as it sits. So I'm just going to go through and I'm going to whisk all of these eggs together. So guys, now what's the harm in not getting them completely whisked? Honestly, nothing. All that's going to happen is if you have patches of the whites, which are the clear portion you can kind of see in here, that is going to leave more of the white egg on your French toast. If you've got a chunk of yolk that's not fully mixed in, it's going to leave the yellow yolk portion on a piece of French toast. It's really not a big deal, but if you want it to be that good, even coat that's all the same, I recommend mixing it as much as possible. Okay, guys, now there are tiny little spots where I can see clear, but I have got this about as mixed as I'm going to get it for the moment. So the next thing I'm going to add is a splash of milk. Guys, this is not measured. You do want to make sure not to add too much or you're going to have a really soupy egg mixture. And if it turns your eggs too light of a color, well, you're going to have a very liquid mixture. It will go a little bit farther, but it just is going to really soak into the toast that much more. And honestly, guys, if I have to guess, I'm going to guess that's actually why you add the egg mixture or the milk to the egg mixture, is just to get that little bit of extra soak into the bread. Now, what type of milk you use, guys, that's totally up to you. At this point, we have whole milk in the fridge for all the kids that want breakfast, and that's what we use in everything else. So you can see this got just a little bit lighter, but not a lot. I am seeing a couple little pieces of yolk in here, as well as some more white, so I'm going to finish mixing this. Now, if I was going to add cinnamon to this, it's actually kind of perfect that I have a jar that is almost completely empty, because I can demonstrate without actually adding any. You want to make sure you've got one that has a shaker top. And depending on your egg mixture is going to determine how much you put in there, as well as how much you like the cinnamon. I recommend start with a single shake like that. Okay, it's going to put a dusting across it, mix that in, see if you can even see it. If you can't even see it, do another little shake like that. You're going to keep doing that. Be careful not to add too much. The cinnamon can get to a point where it overpowers everything. But the nice thing is you can always make a single piece of French toast first, and if you decide it's not enough, add more to your mix. It's really that easy. A lot easier to add more than it is to take it out, trust me. All right, guys, now that I have my egg mixture ready in my bowl, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna get everything else set up and ready. I don't recommend preheating your griddle until your eggs are ready. You don't want it to get too hot while it's sitting dry. That's not good for your stuff. Now you can make this on the stove top. I recommend using somewhat of a low heat until you get a better feel for it. That way you're not ending up burning anything, because one of the tricks with French toast is making sure that any of the egg mixture that has soaked into the bread is cooked all the way through. You don't want something with cooked egg on the outside and runny on the inside. This is not a sunny side up egg. This is a mixture of egg whites and yolks, and egg soggy bread is not that good. So I've got my platter here. I'm gonna set next to my griddle. This is for all of my finished French toast that I will take a picture of when I am all done. I have a large griddle here. This is what we use now. This is not as large as they come. I would love to have a larger one again someday. Each one that we have owned has systematically died. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna plug this in. I've got an extension cord that runs from our ceiling. So if you end up seeing the cord in the video, well, I can just apologize for that. I'm going to set this somewhere between 325, 350 degrees. Let that start preheating. Now, with that said, I've got a couple of utensils here that we are gonna use. Always have my spoon rest, because while I constantly have to wipe down my counters anyhow, I prefer not to make more mess than I have to. I like to use tongs for dipping and laying down the French toast while it's cooking. And don't forget your spatula flipper to flip and pull the French toast off of your heat source. The other thing that I like to do, I'm gonna tilt this down here so you guys can see. I am going to set my bowl of eggs right next to my griddle. Now this griddle has a plastic edge, so it's not, the heat source is not going to be against the side of my bowl, but I like to keep it just close enough that when I put the mixture here and bring it over, it is not going to drip all across my counter. Because again, guys, remember my statement about how hard it is to clean up egg. Okay guys, so while I said you can keep your whisk nearby in case you need to whisk back in your cinnamon or anything like that, I recommend having a spoon rest or something to set it on in the meantime. My flipper is going to be over here on my platter, and I am going to go ahead. I always recommend starting with 2 slices. So we are going to put one in the egg mixture. I use, let's see if I can move this so you guys can see it better. I use the tongs to go ahead and submerge it. I'm going to pick it up. Now guys, here's a little trick that we've learned. Use your dry piece of bread to catch any of the drips. I'm going to bring it over here and we're going to lay it down. I'm going to drop that one in, grab another slice of bread. I'm going to repeat this pattern until I have a griddle full of French toast. Now guys, you're going to see I've got some egg spillage on the griddle. That's okay. Most of the time you're going to have a piece of bread that's going to go on top of that anyhow, and it'll just cook into that slice of French toast. But otherwise, you're going to use that flipper and you're going to scrape them all up in a minute anyhow. Now guys, don't be afraid to use the heel. You know what? All toast should be treated equal, right? Okay guys, I'm going to zoom in here and see. In fact, let me see how far I can zoom in. I want you to see the edges of this French toast. You can see the egg starting to cook right around the edges, but it's also very gooey still. So these are not quite ready. As soon as you see the egg that has pooled around the edge of it start to look a little more cooked, then it's time to start checking and possibly flipping. Now French toast that is not ready to be flipped is not going to move very easily. It's going to be stuck to the pan a little bit. But like this slice here came up pretty easily. We're going to go ahead and flip it. You can peek under it before you flip it. And if you're getting this golden to it, then that is fairly cooked. Now you can see like this spot here. Just make sure it's not wet. And it's not. So we're good there. I'm going to slowly go through and start to flip all of these. Guys, it's a little harder to do one-handed than I'm used to, so things are not landing as evenly as I would like. Now, this one landed on top of this one, so there's a little bit of wet egg up here. We'll flip that back over just to to cover that and make sure that our bases are covered before we're completely done. Now, see this little guy? He's got a little bit of egg on him that is a little gooey yet. So he is going to get flipped back over in a minute too. Okay guys, as our French toast is getting near completion here, guys, keep in mind, this is a pretty quick cooking meal, so it's not going to take a lot of time. We want to make sure, now this is not something everybody does, this is something we do. We want to make sure that all of that egg mixture is cooked. So we like to take it and rotate it on its sides, just as that little extra assurance, because guys, I do not like raw egg. Then, just go ahead and set it on the plate. I'm going to go ahead and work through all of this toast here. Inevitably, as you're making your French toast, you are going to end up with a tiny bit of egg left. Now, you have a couple of choices when you get down to this point. You can go ahead and use extra pieces of bread to soak up whatever you can. Usually, you're going to end up with one that's like half coated. Kids don't typically care either way, though. They still put butter and syrup on it and call it a day. The alternate that you can do that I used to do with our kids when they were younger is take that little bit, throw that on the griddle by itself, and then just kind of use your flipper spatula to scrape it and stir it and create a small serving of scrambled eggs. So you can do whichever works for you, whichever you prefer. In our family, we're going to go ahead and we're going to soak up every last bit for the French toast, because then that can go in the fridge for... sorry, I've got a little one distracting me behind here. It can go in the fridge for leftovers or whatever. French toast really does heat up pretty decently for leftovers as well. So guys, while this is cooking, one thing I want to add is that if you are allergic to cinnamon, not a fan of cinnamon, have some other favorite spices, don't be afraid to experiment a little bit. Try other things, nutmeg, clove. There's a lot of things that I bet would be really good in French toast. This is how people get creative. This is how chefs come up with some of their recipes, is trying things. Again, I always recommend starting with a little bit and adding from there if it's not enough. You can always add more, not as easy to take some out. So that is my recommendation for that. I am gonna go ahead, I'm gonna get all of this cooked up for my family. So far, I have one platter's worth done here. The heel was already snatched by one of the kiddos, and I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna get all of this done with 21 eggs. I am expecting to go through at least 2.5, right about 3 loaves of the breakfast breads. They're slightly smaller loaves than say your regular white bread or something like that. Feel free to use whatever type of bread you want. Maybe you've got a favorite, maybe you like sourdough, maybe it's whole wheat. Maybe it's gluten-free. Now, guys, the only warning I'm going to give with gluten-free breads is if they're frozen, it's going to take a little bit more playing to make sure that your bread is thawed. In fact, I would recommend thawing your bread before you do this. But remember, a lot of those breads crumble and whatnot as well. So you're going to have to play with it a little bit. In the meantime, I hope that this recipe has helped you guys out. If nothing else, maybe you got some egg cracking skills out of it. But this is really something simple that just about anybody can do. This is one of those early recipes that we teach a lot of our kids, and is one of those skills that they can leave the house with knowing how to do this. Because there are those basic skills like egg cracking that is really going to come in handy in so many other areas in the kitchen. I hope that you guys are having a blessed day. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss everything else coming up next. And I'll see you in the next one. Little noise maker. Micah, do you like your French toast?
Yeah.
Is it yummy?
Yeah.
Seeing little Miss Taya with her egg allergy, she gets to have toasted breakfast breads with butter and syrup on. We just don't do the egg bath for hers over there. And you like yours too, don't you?
Yeah.